It's Black Friday, and I'm jumping in on celebrating by offering discounts on 3 of my offerings. The first is the Baby Sleep Roadmap, which is 75% off until December 1st. This is a resource that takes you from morning through the night to the next morning in terms of how to optimize sleep using environment, connection, and timing. The second is my Baby Sleep mini course. It's not so mini. It's very comprehensive and includes resources and guidelines for birth right up to toddler and preschoolhood. It is 50% off. It's self-paced and you have lifetime access. Lastly, my group coaching program, the Confident and Connected Baby Sleep program, is a 12-plus month group coaching program that gives you online resources, coaching every week, and a community of amazing parents who are going on this journey towards mature sleep for their kiddos along with you. It is $200 off until December 1st. If you want to explore any or all of these offerings, go to familysleep.ca/Black Friday. That's Black-Friday for all the information. If you have any questions, just reach out. My email is heather@heatherboyd.ca. Happy Black Friday. Welcome to the Baby Sleep Connection, a podcast that explores baby sleep and more through the lens of attachment and development. I'm your host, Heather Boyd. I'm a mom of 3, an occupational therapist, and a certified infant and family sleep specialist. If you are a tired parent who wants to support your baby sleep holistically, keep listening as we delve into approaches that go well beyond the usual strategies of wake windows and bedtime routines. Your baby's sleep is connected with so much more. We are in cold and flu season now. It's your host, Heather Boyd of the Baby Sleep Connection podcast, and I figure it's a very good time of year to be talking about how to parent when you are sick. I was sick last week. I have a kiddo home sick the past 2 days here in our house, so it is quite on my mind these days. Now, my kids are older. When I am sick, it looks a lot different right now than when they were babies. And so I was thinking back to the times that I have been sick as a parent when they were very little, relying on me fully when I was home full time with them on maternity leave. And I have a bit of a framework of what I want to make sure I cover today for you. It will not be everything. Your experience as a parent being sick is going to look different. And I will say right off the top how I've been finishing most podcast episodes these past few weeks. If you think I've missed something in your experience that would have made a difference or could make a difference for you when you're sick as a parent, I would love to hear from you. I think the settings are set up for this podcast to add comments. So feel free to do that or email me at heather@heatherboyd.ca. I would love to hear your experiences with parenting through illness and how to manage it. Now, for the purposes of this episode, I'm talking primarily around short-term acute illness. The issues and challenges with long-term chronic illness will look very different. So I'm talking more about the colds and flus that we experience, but perhaps that is another topic I could pick up on, perhaps with a guest down the road. So you can probably still hear that I don't sound completely normal yet. My voice is still a little bit off, but feeling much better than last week. So let's dive in. I want to start with this idea that as a parent, you can't control everything. And there is nothing like a very bad cold or flu to highlight that. And so there is only so much pre-planning you can do in anticipation of a time where you're going to be down for the count home with the kids. So pre-planning has a ceiling. It has a ceiling. There's only so much you can control. It's something that on a whole, parents are discovering through their parenting journey, this idea of letting go of control of the things that keep things moving forward. Sickness is like a hard stop with that. It's like a bumper that you hit, because whatever you could trick yourself into thinking you can control, when you have the stomach flu or the flu, or a very bad cold, or something that has you needing to attend to your basic health needs, you're going to realize just what falls into the bucket of in your control versus not. The other idea here is that we often are striving for perfection. And when you are sick, well, when you're a parent, period, but especially when you're sick, perfection has to be thrown out the window. There is no perfection. It won't feel like you are thriving. It won't feel like you have balance or have everything taken care of. It is surviving through an acute illness to get through to the other side with everybody's health intact, their safety intact, and hopefully most of their dignity intact, which we'll get to when we talk about your own self-care and the connection that you can nurture with your baby that will help you through these times. Plans will get ditched. Priorities are going to get clear really fast because there's only so many priorities you're going to be able to take care of when you're sick. And so I want to start off the top with that because that, I think, is the crux of everything here when you are sick and you don't get to come to parenting with your full set of tools and your full self feeling vibrant, even if you're exhausted. So I want to start with the idea of not catastrophizing. One of my coaches, who is the lovely Lisa Carpenter. She will be on a future episode of this podcast. She has said that worrying is like praying for crap that you don't want to have happen. So often when we start to feel sick, we think of all the ways that this whole thing, this thing that we're keeping together, our family, our kids, meal times, the house, whatever, is just going to unravel. And so in addition to feeling terrible physically, you're also feeling really stressed and anxious because you can just see how all the nuts are starting to loosen and this thing is just going to fall apart in front of you. And so I want to remind you that it's not necessarily a catastrophe, even if it feels like it is. Get down to the basics of what's going to get you through when you're not feeling very well, which goes back to point number one. You can't control everything. So focusing on the things that are most important, the biggest priorities. When we catastrophize, we just add an entire new spiral to this. So we can stay out of that by some self-talk. In fact, I was just reading up on some evidence that self-talk, when we talk to ourselves in third person, so not I'm going to be fine, I can handle this, but Heather, you're going to be fine. You can do this. We are going to get through. It's very different for the nervous system. And so give it a try the next time you're facing what feels like a catastrophe, is change the language on it to talk to yourself in third person. I highly recommend you do this to the mirror if you are well enough to stand in front of a bathroom mirror and make eye contact with yourself. Of course, if you are hugging the porcelain gods, you might not have a reflective surface to talk to, but do what you can to check in on the self-talk that you have around making this a catastrophe versus dealing with the reality. The second thing I'd like to say is outsource, outsource, outsource. I often say to parents who are working with me at the 9-month mark, when a lot of parents end up calling me because sleep has taken a turn for the worse, or they're finally realizing it's not getting better. And I say, treat this like the newborn stage. Like, what casserole dishes did you not call in during the newborn phase? Or what friends or family have offered help and you just weren't either organized or comfortable enough to ask for help, or you didn't need it at the time because you were getting lots of other support. Call in those favors. Swallow your pride. People want to help. People generally love seeing people succeed. They don't want your life to be miserable. And if they can help you in any way, then reach out for it. Don't make it into a trade. Don't say, could you do this? I'll make up for it later. I'll do this for you later. No, just call in a favor, or no favor at all. Just call in the help. It can be in the form of prepared meals. It could be picking up kiddos from daycare or school. It could be doing something else that is relatively urgent, but could be done by someone other than you. Yes, you may do it 100% of the time when you are well, but this is not the time to be hoarding your to-do list. So outsource it wherever you can. It can be a small thing. It can be a big thing. It can be someone that has offered help and you've never called on them before. Or it could be a friend or family member who's been there for you often. And that may be an easier call for you. Who knows? Who knows what can make it hard? Usually it's our own self-talk, by the way, making it hard. Again, people want to help. It feels good to help. I'll get you thinking about the last time that you offered help or were able to help step in with somebody for whatever reason. What did that make you feel like? Were you glad to be able to be of service to someone? The answer is probably yes. So understand that if you don't ask for someone's help, you're actually denying their happiness. Let me put it bluntly. They would love to help you. It feels good as a human being to help others. So take that chance to reach out and ask for some support. It could, of course, also be your partner or spouse. Let's not forget that we often need to articulate really clearly what it is we need. Not a laundry list of stuff, but very specific what it is that we need that's going to make a difference for us. I will move on to the next point, which I've lost track of what number we're on. I think we're on number 3. And this is about you. This is about you when you're feeling crappy. Conserve your energy. That feeds nicely into outsourcing, of course, but let's look at ratcheting down even still more energy saving for you that you're going to need to heal. You're going to need for the stuff that's non-negotiable, the stuff that is in your control that you can't outsource. So find the ways to spend the least amount of energy you possibly can. Lie down. Lie down. Don't be trying to wash the dishes, call in the help, or leave them for later. Lie down on the floor if you have to with toddlers who are really high touch, hands-on, and are going to find it easier to manage a mom who is not as responsive and playful as usual if you're physically down on the floor with them, and letting go of what this is all supposed to look like. I, for one, am someone who never likes to stay in my pajamas, ever. There's only one day a week, unless I am really ill. Sorry, one day a year, unless I'm really ill, that I stay in my pajamas for breakfast. And that's on Christmas morning. And I got to tell you, I'm like antsy to get dressed after we get through that first round of opening gifts with the kids and having breakfast. I was in pajamas last week. I did stay in pajamas. I even put a sweatshirt over top of my pajamas when I was feeling much better. It was a few days in and I needed to run an errand. I'm like, I'm not even getting out of these yet. These are feeling good. That's rare for me, but just find those ways to save the energy. I am thinking about a situation when I was pregnant with my second and my toddler was home with me and I don't know what I had. I think a stomach flu of some sort. And actually, this is a great example of two of the things I've mentioned. I called a neighbor to ask her if she could drop off some ginger tea or ginger something for me. She lived across the road. I knew she was home, and I also knew she was a lovely human being who would be more than happy to help. So I had a little delivery from her. I still remember her standing at the front door saying, I'm not getting very close to you. It must have been the stomach flu. I'm not getting close, but here it is, just outside the door. And that was lovely. But I also remember being somewhat worried. I didn't catastrophize, or maybe time has softened my memory of this. I don't think I catastrophized, but I was at least mildly curious how I was going to get through the day with a toddler. And I ended up lying down on the couch and I brought some toys out on the floor. And my toddler, who was very high touch, very high needs, highly sensitive, I don't know what stars were aligned, but he played quietly on his own right next to me on the floor, putting the toys on my back, putting the toys on the couch, and just adapting his play to meet what I was able to do, which is pretty much simply be present. Like, that was it. Physically, I was there. I wasn't interacting. I wasn't doing much of anything at that point. But it reminds me of a classic story in our family from my upbringing too, where my mom was either exhausted or sick, raising 3 kids at home, and she went to lie down on one of our single beds in our room. I decided that I would go into caregiving mode, and I wanted to cover up with a blanket, so I did. And I thought that was such a good idea that I would take all the towels out of the cupboard one by one and place them on her. And she recalls, the way she told the story was that she knew what we were doing, and that there would be this massive pile of towels to refold and put away afterwards, but she was so tired that she just didn't budge, and we layered her up with multiple towels from the cupboard. So do what you need to do to conserve that energy. Last, and I saved this one to the last because one of them is kind of what I would say frustrating for me anyway to do. And then another layer to this that's connected. And this is all about prepping ahead of time. Ooh, I know it seems so unfair to say anticipate being sick so you can prepare and plan to be sick, as if you don't have enough to do when you're well enough as it is. One of the basic preps is to get leftovers and freeze them so that when you're under the weather or when you're pinched for time, you have a stash in your freezer. With 2 teenagers in our house, it is a rare day for us to have any leftovers at all. So if that is your wheelhouse, if you're good at doubling or tripling recipes and you want to do that, go ahead and do that. Start saving up some of those quick meals, especially if they're meals that are quick and easy to give to your little ones, like egg bites or muffins or easy finger foods, and some nourishing soup or bone broth for you. Bonus. Actually, that is something that we do have in the freezer typically. I'm the only one that eats bone broth unless we're putting it in a recipe. So there's usually something in there for me or for anyone else who wants to in my family take me up on the offer to warm up some bone broth. Usually it's just for me. So prepping can be helpful in the kitchen. Freezing stuff is great. Prepping some activities for the kids. I would say in general, if you are someone who is inclined to keep the environment fairly simple in terms of toys and you rotate toys, you might find that this is fairly easy to kind of prep ahead of time with a stash of activities for the kids. If you collect little things from the dollar store over time that are good, or you have some things that have been out of circulation for a while, this would be a great time to bring it in because novelty attracts attention. We are novelty seekers as human beings, and so if it's different, it attracts our attention, and that may help with busy toddlers or preschoolers to keep busier for a little bit longer when you are down for the count. But there's a second layer to preparing, and this wasn't something that I thought of until I was heading down here to record this, and that was that part of the preparation for managing illness with kiddos who still have high needs, and that's any little one who needs you physically and emotionally at a real high level. And I would say especially for highly sensitive kiddos, but let's be frank, any kiddo 3 and under is going to have high needs for you, for your presence, for your care, to meet basic needs from wiping bums to getting dressed to feeding. So how can we prepare that piece? And I am going to suggest that one of the key things that you might be doing already to prepare, and what may have made my experience with my toddler when I was pregnant and under the weather end up playing so amazingly well, like he had never, ever played that independently before, is connection and attachment. And if you were guessing that I was going to weave connection and attachment into even a podcast on parents who are sick, then you'd be right. I don't have a prize for you, but you guessed right. When we parent through an attachment lens and are open to meeting the need as it is, to allow dependence to be the pushing off ground for our kids to push into independence, to know that when we stay highly connected and are open to meeting that need and not begrudging the high level of dependence that our kids have, I feel like if we picture that as a connection cup, a cup that gets filled, not just day to day, but throughout their life, then when the circumstances are different and it's clear that we're less available, they will trust that we are there for them when they need, and perhaps that allows them to adapt to something that's going to look a little different today or tomorrow as you're recovering from being ill. So don't underestimate that if nothing else on this list is resonating for you as a way to get through illness, perhaps you are listening to this while you are sick. Know that what you have already done to foster a connection may smooth out some of the edges of the demands or high needs that your baby may have today while you're recuperating. Now, I haven't thought about that whole point very much, but I'm going to sit with that some more today and think about the ways that connection actually supports this resilience or adaptability with our kids because their needs have been so fully met until now. I'm thinking of, no, I don't think this was because of connection. I think it was just, again, the stars align. Isn't it funny when that happens? I feel like in some ways, the less that we can spiral into catastrophe and the more we can keep things into perspective, perhaps the more these stars can align because we're remaining relatively calm and not worrying as much as we could worry, as I certainly was worried when my toddler was with me and I knew I couldn't do very much at all. And that is a situation where I had stomach flu again when my second was born and was 6 months old and feeding a lot in the middle of the night. And I thought, what am I going to do when he wakes up in the middle of the night? Like, I don't know what I'm going to do because I can barely lie here and I'm spending time in the bathroom, in a hotel room. We were away on vacation for a couple of nights to Ithaca, New York. I think we all ended up getting it eventually. I don't know what happened, but he didn't wake up until I was in those little moments when you have the stomach flu where you actually feel relatively amazing. That's when he woke up to feed. It was like once, maybe twice. And by the morning, I was feeling much better. We beetled right home so that if anyone else was going to get it, we'd be at home for round 2, which thankfully we did. Everybody got home before anyone else got sick. But I will say as well, I'm going to add something around prioritizing, because you've got a little kiddo who does have needs that need to be met, whether you are sick or not, whether you have backup or not, whether you have someone to call in for help or not. We need to prioritize safety. So making sure that your kiddos are in a safe environment first, physically safe. They need sustenance, so they need something to eat and drink. That will be crucial, right? But we also need to take care of ourselves. So make sure that you are getting sustenance. You are drinking water, having that bone broth, or eating something that's going to support your ability to show up in the minimalized ways that you need to show up in parenting today. Because even when your kiddo has needs that only you can meet because you are the only one there, taking care of yourself is what's going to allow you to do that. I'll finish off by reminding you to keep things minimal. Do the bare minimum. Keep them safe, give them sustenance, and the rest is negotiable. Negotiable by you, of what you are capable of giving and not giving. And trust that any of the connection and attachment and meeting the needs that you've done up until now is going to support at least some adaptability because they trust that you are there when they need you. They may call on you a little less. I'm sending that wish your way, especially if you're listening to this and you are under the weather today trying to manage. Sending you best wishes to feel better soon and to get through with everyone's health and dignity intact. When I talk about dignity, it's about not giving ourselves too hard a time for imperfect parenting. We are all imperfect. And to know that we can still meet the basic needs, even if it's not up to our usual par and we're not showing up as our usual selves. So best wishes to you all. And I hope that this episode will not be relevant to you. But if it is, know that I have huge empathy for you in getting through parenting little ones when you're sick. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me on this episode. I do hope that you found the information and perspectives in this podcast episode helpful to you as you navigate your baby's sleep development. Of course, this podcast provides general information and it isn't tailored to your family's reality or the specific needs of your baby. If you're concerned about your baby's sleep or health, be sure to reach out to your healthcare provider. If you're feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you need a place to feel nurtured and reassured, you can find me on Instagram at familysleep.ca. Until next episode, look for the connections that support you and your baby.